Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and we've still got red on Coin Paprika. Nothing much has changed other than, let's see, maybe the biggest losers have changed. Right now we have Bitcoin and VeChain and Stellar and Ethereum are the biggest losers. But other than that, there's not really anything to talk about. It's not a good day in the markets. There is one thing to talk about, Ledger Nano S, who is one of my sponsors. The link's going to be in the top of this description. They've got 10% off on the backup pack. So Nano S Plus, and you get a Nano X for $205 instead of $228. I use several of these things. Now, Joseph Lubin, for the first time since they asked him at Consensus about the holdings and if he was concerned at all about how much Ethereum Consensus and some of the original buyers in the ICO got, Joseph Lubin has popped up because the Ethereum merge is, I guess, today. Well, that's a little bit of an issue for me because everything that Gary Gensler and the SEC has gone after all other crypto for, they're ignoring with Joseph Lubin. They ignored his first security issuance. They're ignoring his second security issuance. And he's bragging about his staking and lending product, which Gary Gensler also said is a security. Listen up.
Is there a sense of how much people are going to stake kind of in the initial months of the merge and what that will mean for what Ethereum is worth?
Well, there's already an enormous amount of Ether staked in the Beacon chain. The merge is essentially moving the consensus chain and the execution chain together into a single system. So there's already a huge amount of Ether staked, and we anticipate...
You can't do that. That is a security, according to Gary Gensler. He was going to sue Coinbase over this very thing. Why is Joseph Lubin allowed to do it?
That with the reduction in this overhanging uncertainty, once the merge is complete, that many more actors, including institutions, financial institutions, will take that as a go sign that the coast is clear and that they can treat Ether, a yielding asset, as something that they want to participate in as a decorrelated or uncorrelated asset, and an infrastructure that they already consider potentially systemically important in the future and need to gain.
Systemically? How can it be systemically important if it doesn't even work? And we don't even know if this works. XRP could be systemically important because it works. But I would think before you have to be that important, you at least have to work. They have proof of work never worked, and now they've got to issue a new product, and they don't even know if it's going to work. So how does he know it's going to be systemically important?
Expertise in, and so we've spoken to many financial institutions that are ready to dive in.
I'm really curious here about staking and some of the dynamics here. Do you fear that staking as a business, as you see Coinbase doing more of, and as you'd like to see more financial institutions do to encourage more staking to build this network, do you think it can come under scrutiny from regulators who fear that this is a yield generating product, that this is could cause some liquidity mismatches, as we've seen in some other yield products in the crypto space?
Yeah, well, it is under scrutiny by regulators. Everything we do is under scrutiny by regulators. And since the start of the advent of our ecosystem, we've been progressively decentralizing what we do.
Now, just think about this for a minute, folks. Everybody in crypto is scared to do anything. They can't do anything because all Gary Gensler will tell them is, oh, you got to come in and see us. Well, this guy did come in and see them under Bill Hinman and Jay Clayton, and they sat down and talked with him, worked with him, and they did it for reasons unknown to anyone. But everybody else, if you, quote, come in and see us, you become nothing but a stack on the shelf, and then you eventually, they gather info to go sue you. Why not Joseph Lubin? Why not Ethereum? This is a problem. You cannot be a regulator, Gary, if you're listening. You can't be a regulator and tell the world, oh, well, securities laws, traditionally, they've always been this way. This is not new. These are securities. But then you only apply that to everyone except for Ethereum. You can't do it. That's not going to work. I don't know what planet you came from, Gary, but that's not going to work. And it's not going to go away. That's the reason I think the Ripple lawsuit gets settled, because these guys were over the target. It's not going away. It only goes away with a level playing field. And they can't get away with what they've done, or we don't have a country. That's the problem. This country is screwed. If we have crossed the threshold to where guys like Joseph Lubin get to do whatever they want, and the same rules don't apply to him and the digital asset that he created that they do to everybody else, then this country is screwed, folks. It can't happen this way. And I don't think it's going to happen this way, because I think that these guys never, ever thought that they would get it back, and that people would say they've had enough, that's all we ever wanted, was a level playing field. And what's going on is bullcrap. And Congress, if any of you guys get to that hearing on Thursday, we're going full throttle. We're going to name names. Anybody who goes up there and decides they're going to be a wussy in this whole hearing thing. This guy needs to be taken out. Gary Gensler needs to be made. It needs to be made very clear to this guy that you can't apply the law to one guy one way and another guy another way. It's all got to be the same. It's got to be a level playing field, or no go. It's not going to work that way.
We couldn't start out massively decentralized, and that is the goal. And every time that hackers or attackers within the rules in our ecosystem to try to exploit certain systems for monetary gain, or regulators identify weaknesses, and some of those weaknesses are in the form of centralization in our technology, we take that as a teaching signal, and that's where we focus next on making things rigorously, maximally decentralized. And so we already have a lot of work underway to decentralize every aspect of the staking ecosystem.
Yeah, but it's not now, man, and you know it. All these guys know it's not decentralized. Look at this tweet from Stefan Huber. It's even on their Wikipedia page. Consensus has raised capital from the public in the form of ICOs several times. Right here. Several Consensus companies and projects have raised capital from the public in the form of initial coin offerings. Gnosis, this one. Anyway, so they've issued multiple securities, not just Ethereum 1.0 and 2.0. They've issued several ICOs. Those are securities too, according to Gary Gensler. Jay Clayton even, he never saw an ICO that wasn't a security. Over and over and over. There's nobody that's more guilty of breaking securities laws than the Ethereum founders. These guys did it over and over and over. And what? Because Bill Hinman said in his personal opinion that Ethereum was decentralized, that none of the laws apply now? When now he says it's just my personal opinion, right? It's a bunch of BS, and everybody knows it. Then we had this guy who was at the Justice Department, and he for 2 years, he was in charge of developing the regime around crypto crime legislation and prosecution. So I retweeted it and I said, well, what was his job? To not go after the Ethereum guys and then quit after the merge? Because it sure feels that way. I mean, now, all of this against the backdrop of there is that All the World's a Stage file, folks. And never forget, I do have an All the World's a Stage file and a All the World's a Stage file B, because of the size of the other one. I just like to mention that every once in a while. Now, Jungle Inc., who's been, in my opinion, on fire, has put out another one of his shorts that I really liked. Ripple versus SEC settlement terms for September. He is convinced that this thing is settled in September, and I like it. Listen to this.
I've been trying to rack my brain. How does the SEC get out of this court case with Ripple with an appropriate settlement that doesn't give all the control of the cryptocurrency space away? And I think I've got it here. What they are going to do is they are going to classify every sale of XRP pre-on-demand liquidity is a securities violation. It's going to be an eye-watering fine. It's not fair, but that is the price to admission for Ripple.
I think he's right here. I think Gary's trophy is going to be probably the biggest fine in SEC history. Now Gary might need that fine so that he can pay the settlement with the John Deatons of the world. Because that settlement might be even more, because these guys, I'm telling you, I don't believe these guys can ever let the public see what's in those emails, and they can't afford, they have to shut this thing off before this trail leads any further down the road, because we all know where it leads. Or I do. Everything in my gut tells me where this thing leads. And it's not to a good place for all these people involved. You've seen the names. It's not to a good place at all. I think they have to settle. I think the plan from the beginning was to never settle, was to string Ripple out as long as they could, all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary. But I think that there's this little thing called John Deaton and social media, XRP, Army, community, whatever you want to call it, which is really just a bunch of interested parties who want a better future for their children, and they saw something that just wasn't right, and they saw all of this weird stuff going on, and for one time, some of these people faced an ounce of accountability or public shaming for not being held accountable. Watch the rest of this.
And going forward, Ripple's going to be required that every single XRP they sell is for the functionality of on-demand liquidity. It's what they're already doing, people. This is going to be the settlement terms, and it's going to happen next month.
I love it. Look, that right there, I like anybody with guts. This guy is laying it down. He's giving his opinion of what makes sense. It does make sense what he's saying, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. And guess what? He could be wrong, and big deal. He told you what he thought. So what? He could be wrong. Everybody can be wrong. We're all human. Now, something that was in this video that I put together for you this morning that I wanted to hit again, just to reiterate it. I want to make sure we all understand who we're dealing with here. Part of the clip that I showed this morning was Gary Gensler teaching the students at MIT, one of the most prestigious universities in the United States of America. Think about this for a minute, folks. He's the current chairman of the SEC of the United States. He is literally explaining to these students at MIT that it is okay for a monopoly to expect, a monopoly which we shouldn't have at all, to expect some kind of a payoff from a startup like Ripple to be able to grow their business in the United States of America. And he thinks that's okay. He thinks that's just the cost of doing business. So what does that tell you about our SEC chairman and what kind of a person he is? Because that's not the world I live in. Is it the world you live in? Here he is right here. Let's hear it again. You need to hear this again.
The top of the global financial infrastructure.
Central monopolist with another central monopolist. A lot of commercial banks aren't terribly excited about that.
Right. So in other words, he's telling you, central monopolist, that's just the way it is, first of all. That's the way it is in Gary's world.
Maybe you're going to have to give some ownership.
Maybe you're going to have to get held over a barrel. You know, in some corners, what do they call that? I'm drawing a blank on the freaking word. Is that, I think it's an illegal term, but anyway, holding somebody over a barrel, holding them at gunpoint. How about getting your regulator friends to hold them at gunpoint and say, hey, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, guess what? We're not going to give you that. That, my friends, is called corruption.
Give 50% of your ownership to the 20 banks that are now,
because they've got a monopoly, and over at the SEC, we help enforce the monopoly. And so, you might have to give over some of your ownership. You got to pay the toll, right? That's called corruption, folks.
I mean, there are other ways to build incentive systems. Maybe you put a native token in there and you give.
Ooh, maybe you create XRP and then you give it away to some of these banks so that they don't get their regulator friends after you. Maybe you do that.
You give, them the native token. So there may be other incentive ways to beat the current
to pay them off so that they'll let you do business. It sounds kind of like what Greg Kidd said, didn't it? That this is like Tony Soprano, like the mafia. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, I love The Sopranos. I've watched it, and I remember one episode where Tony Soprano, there was a guy that owned a sporting goods store, and the guy owed him gambling debts, and so they went in and basically just started taking everything out of his store that he wanted, and eventually ruined his business because they wanted him to pay him off and drove his business into the ground. It's almost like what Gary's saying is that the SEC should operate like the mafia, and that's just normal. That's just the way it is. Wall Street is forging ahead in digital assets despite the crypto winter. Financial heavyweights, including Charles Schwab, Citi, and Fidelity, are starting up cryptocurrency exchange EDX markets. It's happening, folks. And then we have Naveen Gupta from Riz. Gary Gensler resign.
We started looking into solutions in the market. We're looking for a future-proof technological solution. And at the top of these solutions, we found Ripple to manage or to address all our strategic ask, which is basically a fast, cheap, transparent, and safe transaction.
As a receiving bank in India, I mean, we are one of those players who are extremely focused as far as cross-border payments is concerned, and remittances is a big opportunity for India in the overall scheme of things, with the last World Bank report having talked about almost 79 billion coming to the country in 2018. When we first met Mr. Rao from Ripple, it happened at one of the large global networking events. We realized that it's something which is very different and very unique, and what the world had not seen all this while, and sort of lashed onto the opportunity, got discussing, trying to figure out what is it that we could do.
During our search for a partner on Ripple, we partnered with Indocent for many, many reasons. We've gone through a lot of selection criteria and due diligence, and we started to collectively start this journey together. The fact that you can see where a transaction is happening, so it tells you that it left the organization, it's on the way to be received to the other client and then received by other client. So we'll have to build a customer experience around that to make sure that the customer feels so comfortable when using it.
It has been one of the most pleasant experiences in terms of going live with a new partner. See, I've been in this business for almost 15 years now, and normally one were to do a bilateral tie-up with a counterparty on the other side, it could take you months. I mean, the legal agreements, time-consuming, talks between technology teams, coming to understanding and agreement. It can take ages, and at times it can be very, very frustrating. And as Carla rightly said, I think this was one of those integrations that perhaps was up and running in a span of about 1.5 months.
Looking awesome. Saudi Arabia, India. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family that it looks like Gary wants to run the SEC like and hold everybody over a barrel like the mafia. He thinks that's okay. Tony Soprano